Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CMS in Touch Hot of the Press series event. We'll be online shortly. In the meantime, please take a moment to say hello in the chat by putting your name and where you're joining us from. Hello, thank you for joining our CMS in Touch event today. We'll begin shortly, but in the meantime, please take a moment to say hello in the chat by putting your name and where you're joining us from. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ilaria Boncori, and I'm really delighted to welcome you to the CMS in Touch event. If you haven't already done so, please take a minute to say your name and where you're joining us from in the chat. So I will provide a little bit of an introduction to the event today and then leave the main event to our speakers. So as you probably know, CMS in Touch was developed with support from the Academy of Management CMS division and the journal organization to provide a free online space for critical scholars to exchange views, research, news, and we have a wide range of events that we run throughout the year. You can find those recordings on our YouTube channel. One of those event series is called Hot of the Press, which is what we are having today, is an event for Hot of the Press, which is a series that is focused on exchanges with editors and authors on books that have been recently published or are to be published soon. Today's event is going to last about 1.5 hours. There will be a presentation and then a Q&A. Please feel free to post your questions and comments in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen rather than in the chat. So please don't put your questions in the chat, and then we will collect the questions and comments and feed them to our presenters. So without further ado, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce today's event on doing academic careers differently, which is something very close to my heart. And I'm really pleased to welcome Alexandra Bristow, Sarah Robinson, and Olivier Ratle in introducing this wonderful edited volume. And they will tell us a little bit more about themselves and the work they've been engaging with. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilaria. Okay, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. Could you please just wait in the entrance hall for a moment for our tour to begin. This book, Doing Academic Careers Differently, Portraits of Academic Life, is effectively a portrait, is effectively an exhibition of 46 portraits that have lovingly been painted by 82 authors or portraitists based in 21 countries representing all inhabited continents. So this book is part of our wider project to give voice, space and hope to visions of an alternative, more nurturing, diverse and inclusive academia. So as this book is about doing academic careers differently, you will see as we continue our tour that this book is done differently in many ways. And so our book launch will also be done differently. So we would like you now to gather to imagine that you are on a tour of a gallery, of an exhibition. So you are gathering here all together in the entrance hall and cloakroom, where the three curators of this exhibition, myself, Sarah Robinson, Alexandra Bristow and Olivier Ratle, as curators, will take you through the galleries respectively. And then we will go through to the gift shop, and finally we will do some reflections back in the gallery and have some Q&As. Okay, so at the beginning, before we proceed to the galleries, we'd like you all to take a seat, please, in the entrance hall, and we will talk you through some of the background to the book, the process of writing the book or developing the exhibition, we could say, and then the concept of the gallery, the exhibition, the portrait theme that we will be working with throughout the book and throughout this book launch. Okay, so firstly, I will hand over to Olivier, who will give a brief background to the book. Alex will then outline the process of putting it all together, and then I will say a little bit more about the development of the concept. So over to Olivier, please.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to everyone for being there. And before I talk you about the origin of the book, I would like just to tell you briefly about what exactly you're seeing on your screen. In a moment, you will see an absolutely wonderful illustration made by the Bristol-based illustrator Joe Latham, and this is an illustrated map of the exhibition you will be seeing. But what you have right there in front of you is one of the earlier drafts of this map. We wanted through this event today to give you a sense also of the making of this book, and that includes also the making of this absolutely wonderful illustration from Joe Latham. So you will see different stages of the illustration. What I want to tell you, I mean, there's a story we often tell, which is the story of how we came to work together. And it starts with us, the three of us, being PhD students in Lancaster, and, you know, having to some extent as great a time you can have as a PhD student. And as we finished, we all went our separate ways to different institutions in different parts of the country. And a few years later, we gathered back, met up, and realized that we were generally quite dissatisfied with our experiences, our respective experiences as early career academics, and it wasn't exactly matching what we were expecting. And we started, you know, thinking that it would be good to more formally study academic labor and to study in particular the predicament of early career academics. And we've done this together for about 10 years. We've published several articles together, book chapters. So for a long time, we've been working on academic labor together. generally we were quite shocked and disturbed by the stories we heard from our participants, and we really thought that we needed to embrace this idea of academic activism. And one thing we routinely argue in everything we write is that individual solutions to the problems we're collectively facing are bound to not work. So we often advocate for collective solutions to the problem faced by academics. And in that sense, we thought a book would be a great idea as a tool to do that. So that's part of the story. There's another story, which is the specific story of how this beautiful book that I have in my hands now, how this book came into being. And I think I would trace back the history of this book to 2017. And what happened in 2017, we came across a call for paper from the Academy of Management, Learning and Education Journal, which was a critical celebration of a landmark book, the book Rhythms of Academic Life, edited by Peter Frost and Susan Taylor. A great book in many respects, and the call for paper was for a critical engagement and a critical celebration of this wonderful book. And one thing, I mean, we love the book, but one thing we didn't like about it is that in spite of being called Rhythms of Academic Life, there wasn't that much that was about rhythms specifically. And our contribution to that special issue in response to the call for paper was precisely to conceptualize what does it mean to take seriously the idea of rhythms when we look at academic career. But as we engaged deeply with this book, we were also quite dissatisfied or a bit disappointed by the overall message of the book. In a way, you got many great authors in this book, many very successful scholars who tell you basically how to become like them. And we thought that this was very normative, this was very prescriptive. There is actually, to be fair, a small, very, very small section in the book which is called Non-Traditional Path, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of the book. And what we really wanted to do was to give voice to those other ways of thinking about academic careers. And this became really the main idea of the book, that we didn't want just a book about how to be an academic, but how to challenge those norms and prescriptions. Thank you.
Okay, I think thanks, Olivier, and I think we're moving on to the next stage of the map development. You can see the details starting to emerge there in the illustration. So I'm just going to say a few words about the process. So Olivier already articulated how we came to want to do a different kind of book about academic careers. And so if we wanted to really showcase those alternative ways of doing academia, the ones that are marginalized, unheard, unvoiced, repressed, and often, people who try to do these things often get told you're doing it all wrong and you won't succeed. So if we wanted to showcase these different ways of being an academic, how could we best do it? And we sort of briefly played with the idea of doing quite a traditional sort of book, so mapping out our chapters, which is what you normally need to do for a book proposal, inviting people we know who do interesting stuff on these sort of themes, but it just felt wrong. And it felt wrong because we came to realize that we were trying to do a book about doing things differently in quite a way that was quite mainstream, and normative. So it just was plain wrong. So we realized that in order to do this book, we also needed to edit it differently. And so it became sort of really part of the process became part of trying to articulate different ways of being an academic itself. So we realized that we had to do an open call, basically. We realized that we can't, if we just ask the people we know or people we know of, and to write about things that we know that what they were going to say because we know what they're writing, then we wouldn't really achieve anything because we'd just be, repeating things that are already known and said. So an open call became quite an important sort of editorial technology method to try to capture something unexpected. So in a way, it was like trying to do a sort of qualitative inductive research. We needed to be open to the ideas. We needed not to know what we were going to find. We needed not to know what chapters, what abstracts were going to come, from whom, from where. We needed to be basically as open-minded and as editorially open as possible. So we did this open call, and we were very lucky to work with Terry Clegg at Routledge, who I know is here today, waving at Terry there, who's been an absolute star and extremely patient with us trying to do things differently, who gave us feedback on our initial ideas or proposals. So we knew we are not just putting out a call and ask people to write something for us blindly without and then not being able to have a book contract. We already had some feedback from Terry and knew that we were on the right lines. So we issued this call, and we issued it in the height of the pandemic. It wasn't planned that way, but things happen. And we received more than 80 abstracts back, which was incredible. And they were incredible abstracts, and they were fantastic, shocking, moving, eye-opening, beautiful. And we, I think at that point we went back to Terry and said, we got more than 80 abstracts back. This is going to be a gigantic book. And we finally kind of through thinking about it further, we started really thinking, what do we want in the book? And the answer was we want as much as possible and as different things as possible. So how can we fit as much as possible in that is speaking truly to what we want to do in the book? And so we managed to get it down to 46 chapters. So which itself is an enormous book, and it's showcasing huge diversity that Sarah is going to talk about in a minute. But so open call was really important as part of this process to do things differently. Another thing that was important, we quickly realized from just exchanging messages with the authors, we quickly realized that for many, it was more than just about the book. What we were doing was actually quite important beyond the book. This is about building some sort of a community as well. So we kind of asked our authors for ideas of what we can do together. And because it was also in the pandemic and we all craved contact with others, we actually held a series of Zoom calls with authors where we discussed how we can develop chapters. We encouraged each other to write differently and authentically. We encouraged each other to express ourselves. And as we started mapping out our galleries, which we'll say more about next, but in the process that's actually very similar to kind of inductive coding of empirical data. Those galleries sort of emerged out of the collection of abstracts that we had. We discussed these gallery ideas with authors as well. And so some of these ideas found their way into the final chapters and vice versa. Some of the ideas from the chapters found their way into the gallery descriptions. So yes, and we're hoping to continue this community beyond the book that we'll say more about later on. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Sarah to talk about the concept of the book.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So behind us now, you will see projected on the wall of the entrance hall is the final map of our galleries, a beautiful illustration here that was again a kind of co-constructed project between ourselves and Joe, the illustrator, and he again was extremely helpful and willing to indulge some of our fantasies of the galleries that you can see emerging here. So first of all, I've already said right at the beginning that we see the book as an exhibition, exhibition of a series of exquisitely and heartfelt, heart-painted portraits of academic life. The idea of portrait emerged through some of our initial conversations about academia and about some of the normative sort of career scripts that we project to the outside world. So we looked a little bit at people's web pages and the photo that you have on your web page, the kind of, you know, all the sort of things you say on your web page, on your official university website about your achievements and accolades, etc. Lies behind that? What is behind those stories? Yeah, this is a certain image or projection of academic life, but what are the stories behind that? How did people get to that stage? And what were the paths not taken? Or what are the paths that people might want to take as well, etc. So the idea of the portraits was really an encouragement and an invitation to tell a different story of your academic career, not just the one that is on your official website, but something else you'd like to share with the academic community to encourage others to perhaps take similar paths and not just follow traditional well-trodden academic trajectories. So that's where we thought about speaking out from behind the mask. And in order to facilitate that, we were thinking around metaphors, that perhaps taking a metaphor might help people in kind of developing their ideas. So you will see through the book, there are lots of different metaphors of different types of academics that have been used as a springboard to develop, paint and shape the portraits that are presented here. So as Alex said, we got 80 abstracts coming in from our open call. We were delighted, but also somewhat overwhelmed and concerned about how we present these and what we do with them. When we started to read the abstracts, we saw that some were quite complex, quite long stories, whereas others were quite short and sweet. And we wanted to get as many, as Alex said, as many portraits into the book as possible. So with this idea of portrait in our minds, we started kind of looking at what are the different types of portraits that are available sort of in exhibitions. We started going on websites and looking at portrait galleries and so on. And we thought, well, there are short and sweet miniature portraits. And there are also long, more developed portraits, some that are individual and some that are much more group style portraits. So that we thought at that point, well, perhaps here is a chance, rather than having a conforming set of chapters or portraits, we could actually have some of different sizes. So after quite a bit of discussion, we decided to have our miniature portraits, which are around 2,000 words, and our full-length portraits, which are around 5,000 words. And so we decided to group them in different galleries and to have in each gallery a mixture of the more miniature portraits and the more full-length portraits where possible. So then the fun started in terms of thinking about galleries. So again, as Alex said, this was through COVID. We couldn't actually visit any art galleries or portrait galleries. So again, we were on Google having a look at portrait galleries and having a look at the types of galleries and how these were named. And I think at that point we got a little bit frustrated in that actually the galleries often were rather boringly named after patrons, etc., of the galleries, rather than really reflecting what was in the galleries. So we tried to kind of subdivide the portraits into different galleries this was, as I say, this was where the fun started, because there was a lot of diversity, but also there was quite a lot of similarities in terms of struggles, in terms of, you know, wanting to do things differently, in terms of working differently, doing things differently to some of the established norms. So eventually we came up with our 9 galleries, and there is overlap between these galleries, but we feel that the portraits that are in each gallery probably have the kind of the core of that gallery at heart, and could perhaps also, you know, secondarily be in maybe 1 or 2 other galleries, depending on which. And you will see also from our galleries that they're not traditional galleries that you never necessarily see just in a portrait gallery. We've actually brought in fairground attraction in terms of our Hall of Mirrors, and our haunted gallery, which again is a little bit like a fairground attraction, and an observatory, which is another kind of tourist exhibition. So they're not traditional, and to put all together, you would see it would be a very strange building to house all these different galleries. But please do indulge us in our imagination in this respect, and you will see that we think it works in terms of the illustration that you see here on the walls in front of you. The 9 galleries finally decided on are the Meandering Gallery, the Against Careerism Gallery, the Navigating a Belonging Gallery, Nurturing Careers, the Hall of Mirrors, the Transgressive Gallery, the Late Entrance, the Living Precariously, and the Haunted Gallery. And as you can see, they are all here. What you can also probably see is that they are not linear. In the book, there is a little bit of linearity, and that is kind of inevitable when you have a book. However, what we want is that our readers, or the visitors to the galleries, take any route that they wish through the book. So as you can see from the map, you can go in many different directions through different doors into different galleries according to your will. We do, however, start at the entrance and cloakroom, just in terms of some orientation, and we finish at the gift shop and exit through the gift shop, which was again suggested by one of our authors, Mark Stringer, at one of the video sessions that we had. Also, in terms of galleries, we, instead of being editors of this book, we decided we wanted to be curators. We had been gifted all these wonderful portraits, and rather than editing these portraits, we wanted to work with the authors or the portraitists to develop and shape the exhibition and their work. So we gave ourselves the titles of curators rather than authors, rather than editors. And rather than writing editor's notes in a formal way, we decided to write curator's notes. And as you will see from the book, the curator's notes became quite a work in their own right, a work of creative writing. And that was something new to us in terms of book writing or academic writing. And it was something we really enjoyed doing. And we shared these with our authors and got quite a lot of feedback from them as well. So thank you to our authors for that. Okay, I think I've said everything I needed to say there. So the introduction basically to the book is in the entrance and close, and the conclusion is in the gift shop. Right, so it's time, please, to stand up, stretch your legs a little bit after that introduction, and we will start to take you through the galleries. So I'll hand you over to curator Alex, who will take you through to the Meandering Gallery.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Okay, so welcome to our first gallery. Of course, if you read the book, you might come to it last. or in any other order. But as you can see, this is a rather disorienting space, and this is intentional. So we imagine the meandering gallery as a kind of non-Euclidean space with distinctly Escher-esque vibes. It feels both endlessly spacious and mysteriously maze-like. There are many ways through this gallery. It adjusts itself to you, enabling you to forge a path that is uniquely yours. You can see passages running through in all directions, and as you turn towards them, and they become more solid, as you turn away, they fade into nothing. So this gallery, if you have a sense of adventure, this gallery will not disappoint you, but it will slow you down as you figure out your own path. The academic portraits, so the academics you will meet here, they do their academic careers differently by refusing the pressure to specialize in one particular sphere of academic work, which is often, of course, advocated as the best, most effective and fastest way of progressing an academic career. So the portraits in this gallery epitomize the spirit of the whole book, because the academics here take joy in meandering to find one's own alternative career pathways. Okay, back to you, Sarah, I think to the next gallery. It's a bit of whistle-top tour.
Yes, okay, so please come this way and gather round, and you have now entered the Against Careerism gallery. As you can see, this is a large, stark, white-walled gallery where pop art primary colours jangle and jar messages of resistance against the commercialization and commodification of the neoliberal university. There are video installations that loop and project defiant words such as stop, think, say no, resist on those white walls. Yet, also, you will hear disembodied voices encouraging you to take on more, to say yes, to career towards excellence, and that breaks the silence of reflection that is here in this gallery. So we see this gallery as a wake-up call. It's a place to stop careering, to sit down on that nice, fat, comfortable bench you see in the middle there, and to reflect on why you entered academia in the first place, to think about what it has become and maybe what you have become, and what it could be, and also perhaps what you could be. The contributors to this gallery bring their own images and metaphors of resisting careerism, of embracing failure, of nurturing and caring for the self, of leading value and vocation-driven careers. And these adorn the empty walls here. So collectively, they reclaim academia, they make it their own place, and they showcase what is important to them. Right, over to Olivier, please. Oh, sorry, it's back to me. Apologies.
Thank you.
The next gallery is again mine. Okay, so welcome. Come on in through the wooden door. Watch, it's very heavy, and apologies for the creaking hinges. On the other side, you will find a vivid atmospheric space of navigation within academia, which involves plotting paths, grappling with navigational difficulties, and searching for new horizons and homecomings. On the walls here, you can see hang monumental works of ships on stormy seas and the horizons of brave new lands. Collectively, the chosen works in this gallery shed light on the shameful, treacherous face of our profession, on hostility, biases, prejudice, and the rejection of the outsider. Contributions to this gallery, however, display the intrepidness, tenacity, and bravery in navigating academia by choosing their own guided stars and plotting their own meaningful routes. This navigation can be really difficult when you're not starting from the right place. And being out there on the open sea where one is disorientated and exposed, it requires courage, skill, and reflection. Some of our authors have arrived unaided, others with the support of fellow travellers and allies, whilst some are still travelling. And so, to the next gallery is to Olivier now.
So we move on to this beautiful garden. We envisioned this gallery really as a restorative space where one can feel resourced and nurtured. And this gallery explores how careers are shaped differently by various kinds and forms of nurturing and caring, including motherhood, care for the environment and broader communities, care for students and for each other as colleagues, and care and nurture of oneself. 4 contributions are presented exploring respectively how permaculture, which is a specific set of principles for cultivating the land, can be used as a tool for reflection and as a guide for a sustainable and meaningful career. We can also see how important are relationships, especially in a context where academic work is increasingly mediated by geographical distance and by technology. We can see how one can have a rich and successful career without compromising professional integrity, nor diminish commitment to being a good parent. And we can see why care is so important in the context of the fragmentation that characterize academic life. So this gallery really will invite you to reflect on how relationships are often instrumentalized and on why we should instead pursue relationship for the sake of relationship. And I will pass on. We will move to the Hall of Mirrors.
So come this way, please, come in through the flap in the tent, and welcome to the Hall of Mirrors. This fairground attraction reflects, diffracts, and diffuses academic life at its best and its worst. The reflections you encounter here may make you smile, laugh, cry, or cringe in horror. The reflections I've chosen for this gallery show how mirroring an ideal academic type is expected, and how the profession is being reflected back to us as homogeneous, and yet how personal struggles can bravely shatter such normalizing images. The resulting shards show how alternative career structures and possibilities for those show that there are alternative career structures and possibilities for those whose image does not reflect such norms. There are poetic and artistic reflections in this gallery, autoethnography and diarizing. There are reflections on the diffraction of the disruptive effects of the COVID era, and also the normative effects of the neoliberal university. Visions of others are reflected as role models that can diffuse the light of hope and inspiration like glittering confetti. So now we leave the Hall of Mirrors and we move to the Transgressive Gallery.
Thank you, Sarah. So transgression arguably makes for the most radical departure from prescribed career norms, short of leaving academic employment altogether. The academics you will encounter in this gallery share this impetus to transgress boundaries, particularly between academic and non-academic careers, but also between disciplines and between academic careers and personal lives. Their stories are brimming with creativity and wonderment, and portray 2 activists, a philosopher, a journalist, and 2 performing artists, all combining these with their academic work. We imagine this space as embodying the spirit of openness. It is a room that spills beyond the confines of the building its fourth wall is broken, opening into a garden. So another garden, but quite a different one from the nurturing space. And it's inviting you to step outside and explore. And as you do explore the garden, you realize that it grows its dreams of openness and freedom on the roots of suffering. Pain is the price of transgression, yet this darker undertone somehow make the garden more alive and more vibrant. The transgressive dreams it grows are full of sharp thorns, and yet they are deeper and more hopeful for it.
And we move on to the late entrance gallery. The focus of this gallery is on those who come into academia later in life and for who it's a second or a later career. There are several themes that are addressed and that will feel relevant to readers who came late to academia. The complexity of university structures, the numerous internal barriers inside institutions, the arbitrariness of promotion processes, the subtleties of the social world inhabited by academics, the particular motivation of late entrants, and something very important, the frustrations that are derived by often the hypocrisy of employers who publicly are valuing experience, but ignoring the same experience when it comes to pay and promotion. So this is an occupational group that is often overlooked in research and where little attention has been paid to the specific challenges they face. This gallery may inspire late entrants first to reflect on their own experience and motivation, but it also may inspire more formal research into this area. And I'm going to continue taking you through the tour, and we move on to the Living Precariously gallery, where contributors took the opportunity to reflect on how different kinds of precarity have made their careers different. It touches again upon a wide array of themes and forms of precarity, including economic precarity in the labor market, the precarity inherent to motherhood and the penalty it inflicts on women, depression, long-term health conditions and illnesses, toxic workplaces, and writing from the margins of academia. Together, they don't exhaust the different forms of precarity one may experience, but they give us a very rich insight into the lived experience of 5 authors. For some, it's about coming to terms with their struggle and warn others. For others, it's about imagining how things could be different and inviting us to work toward transforming academia.
And last but not least, onto the Haunted Gallery. So the Haunted Gallery lies below the Tower of Precarity in an out-of-bounds area. This is the realm of academic ghosts who leave academia and yet continue to haunt it by doing academic work outside of formal academic employment. These academics do not exist, and yet they do, inhabiting the shadow economy of academic life. They have many stories to tell. Pain, disappointment, sense of failure, and departure are common themes, but ghostly experience can happen at any stage of an academic career. For example, PhD students become de facto ghosts when they expected to meet unrealistic job market requirements and are left in limbo post-completion. Others pass through the haunted realm on transitional paths between temporary contracts or to parenthood. Yet others become ghosts because academic employment conflicts with their values and ethics. They choose to step off the conveyor belt of institutional academic life to tread a more independent path. I myself was an academic ghost once. Despite their bleak experiences, many ghosts find unexpected joy in their ghostly existence and its newfound freedom. Together, the ghost's whisper of the pressing need for an alternative academia, an academia that scholars don't need to leave in order to be happy academics. That concludes our gallery tour, and we are moving on to the gift shop.
Thank you, Alex. And indeed, we are moving to the gift shop again. A brilliant idea that was suggested by our contributors to the late entrance gallery, Mark Stringer. And when we go into gift shops, often what we encounter is often a very disparate collection of merchandise to reflect what visitors choose as takeaway from an exhibition. And what we did, we asked our authors to provide us a few gifts. We weren't able to give voice to each author in this presentation, but we asked them to perhaps join us through a few quotes they would provide. We ask, for example, the authors, what has motivated you to contribute to this book? And we had a few responses where we were told it was a delightfully imaginative experience, that it was incredibly cathartic and actually cheaper than therapy. I'll read a few words from Ralph Wetzel, who said, "I feel that academia urgently needs to give and to hear the voice of the nonconformists to remain relevant and impactful." We ask also, for example, is there any aspect of working on your chapter in this book that you have particularly enjoyed? And again, the theme of therapy with Gabriela Kiss, who said, it felt like self-awareness therapy combined with a writing experiment. That's really the spirit of it. I'm really glad she sent us this. And Anne, who said it was emotionally painful and also quite a liberating experience to write this chapter. Ruth Slater said it was a very different writing experience and that she absolutely loved working with Alex on her chapter. We ask authors to tell us perhaps what's the main takeaway of their chapter. Jesus said, well, it's possible to survive in academia, fulfilling individual goals and serving social interest. And Maribel, who in a nutshell says, skip the conferences, decline promotion opportunities, work with kindred spirit and pursue idiosyncratic ideas for their own sake. And Ruth, who says, we have to deal with the hand we are dealt. Another question, perhaps a bit more remote from the text themselves, we ask our authors, if you could choose any painter to paint your portrait, who would it be? Victoria Pagan says, I think a painter of portraits form a different sort of mirror for oneself. I would choose Madge Gill, and she explained why. And we have also Ross Vince, who gifted us with this picture, and he recounts his experience of visiting an exhibition of Lucien Freud. And I will just quote Vince for saying, I could not believe how complex and deeply alive those portraits were. In Freud's words, the pictures, in order to move us, must never merely remind us of life, but must acquire a life of its own, precisely in order to reflect life. So hopefully we'll have a bit of time to reflect on these words. We have also a few authors who have sent us some clips that I will now play, so that will enable a few authors to join us. Before that, pardon me, we have a picture of Ralph Wetzel, who give us a quote from the Iranian poet Rumi: let yourself be silently drawn by the stronger pull of what you truly love. It will not lead you astray. Ralph wrote the portrait called A Clown's Tale, hence why he is dressed in clown outfit on this picture. So the first clip we're going to have is from Magnus, who is representing here his team of authors who wrote the text Academic Misfits.
We, the academic misfits, we're happy to contribute to this anthology. We think there are many ways of doing academic careers differently, especially if you feel a bit like an outsider, but you need to find your friends. And this anthology shows you what kind of friends there are, and you should look for them. So read this anthology with pleasure, and I hope you can also join us if you want to. And we're coming up with a new anthology of our own in about a year. So please keep in touch. Take care.
So thank you to Magnus for this. And we have a clip from Friederike.
Hi everybody, my name is Friederike Landau-Donnelly. I'm an assistant professor in cultural geography at the Ratle University in Nijmegen, the Netherlands. I'm sending my warm regards from Berlin. I'm really sorry I can't be there for the book launch. I think Sarah, Alex and Olivier have accomplished a really great volume. I'm really looking forward to holding the big thing in my hands. As I cannot be with you today or live, I chose to perform the little concluding poem to my chapter, The Poetic Academic. Overall, the chapter talks about how I struggled through the pandemic and decided to finally start publishing poetry. I was really a bit at a loss to write peer-reviewed journal articles in my first pandemic lockdown, where I stayed in my parents' small town residency close to the forest. And yeah, this little poem that concludes my little chapter things about ways of writing, things of being in and out of place. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks again, congratulations again to Sarah, Alex and Olivier for this volume. Walk, don't write, dried up thinking, lay there, lay here, air. Words will come, stay still, stay ill. When do you think? Whose slowness is virus-proof? Selection is no coincidence. Concrete falling apart, concretely falling apart, teeth in all the wrong places. Moving into absence. The fetish is present. Is crisis management academia's new professional development baby? Will there even be babies after the blaze? Staring, healing, laying on the moving ground, stealing, bearing, feeling the moving ground, bouncing, crying, me, moving grounds, grounding, bearing, healing the grounds. I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations, the book, and take care. Thank you.
So thank you to Friederike. And for the last clip by Mark Stringer, top marks for effort. I invite you to pay attention to the background music he composed as well.
Thanks to Olivier for asking me to produce this for the session on Friday, which is going to be wonderful. And the question that I've chosen to answer is, why should people read this book? And I was thinking about it, and I kind of reframed the question in my head, which was, why wouldn't people want to read this book? And in a recognition of this is necessarily based around the doing an academic career, or the understanding of doing an academic career and doing those differently. But actually, it's the focus is wider than that. It's about which people have to ponder about what is work and why we work. And I think what this book does in such a beautiful wonderful way, from all the contributions, is that it foregrounds that idea and asks us about, and provides us with a polyphony of voices to actually kind of look at and interrogate and interpret what an academic career is in contemporary life. And it's also a good way of opening up the sense of what an academic working in academia is, because it can be seen from the outside as being very privileged and very something which, once you're in it, you're safe, and you can be provided with something for the rest of your life to hang on to and to work with. And I think what this book does so well is it destabilizes that, but also at the same time gives ways of thinking in which we'll be able to deal with things for people that come after us. I'm in the late career section because I've come into academia late. So seeing what's outside and inside really gave me certainly a chance to kind of reflect upon that within my chapter. So I want to thank the editors Sarah, Alexandra and Olivier for producing this, but also to my wonderful colleagues around the world who also contributed. It's absolutely privileged to be part of it.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I think I noticed Mark was among the participants today, so hello, Mark.
Thanks to Olivier for...
That was quite a speedy, fast tour of the gallery, and perhaps it's time to slow down a little bit and sit on the famous bench that you see on the cover, and we're going to have just a little chat about how it went to produce the book. Sarah, you have some thoughts about this?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Alex, first of all, now the book is finished, what do you think we've learned most from this process?
Well, probably too much to kind of talk about here. Learned so much, but I think specifically about being editors and curators, I think firstly that it is so worthwhile to try to think of editing differently, and especially if you're trying to do something different with content. So it's not just about the medium needing to reflect the message, also the process needs to reflect both the medium and the message. And it's super important, I think, and I don't think enough has been done on this yet in the field of beyond how do we edit outside the norms, and review also. I mean, that doesn't relate to our book, but it leads me to thinking about that. How do we review differently? How do we edit differently? So I think this is very important. Secondly, again, to repeat what I said earlier on, the importance of open calls for edited volumes. I think that's that really matters, so that edited books don't become like clicks, representations of academic clicks, and then sort of replicate those clicks that we see at academic conferences often, for example, that newcomers struggle to break into, that just replicate the same voices, but rather they become much more inclusive sort of enterprises that actually manage to say something new and interesting. And I don't think we can do it if we just ask our mates to write book chapters for us, for our edited books. And finally, that support of the right kind of publisher is extremely important. We couldn't have done it without Terry, and the risks he took with us, and his encouragement for us to be creative and actually indulging us our completely wild ideas. I think the right publishers are absolutely fundamental to trying to do things in new and innovative ways. I think I'll stop here. I could go on, but we are short of time. So instead, I wanted to just go back to the wonderful book cover that we've got, and there's a story behind that too. So I wonder, Olivier, if you can tell us of how we came up with the book cover.
Yeah, I think one thing we wanted at the beginning to give you an insight into the making of a book like this, and I'll reveal an important insight, which is that we probably argued far and debated far more about the cover than about the title itself and the substance of the book itself. You will find this incredible, but I didn't know that shades of blue and shades of green could steer so strong emotions among people. So what you have in the end is a consensus that took a lot of efforts to achieve. As a way to give you an insight into the process of choosing the cover, I will show you some alternative covers. We had made various maquettes, if I can say, or attempt to match pictures. We had access to a database of pictures. We had access to various templates that Ratle uses, and we started trying to see, right, what would look good together. And you can see there's a theme here. There's a theme, and for each of these, we had many more than that, but these are four, I think, that were quite representative of what we all liked. We had reason to like some of those or to not like some of these, the final candidates we proposed to Routledge were the one that makes the cover now, and the one that you see in the bottom right corner with the faces. We were worried perhaps that the one at the bottom, the message it was sending was, you're all a bunch of crazy people, and we really didn't want to send a message like this. So we much preferred the message of the bench, which to us is really saying that there's something contemplative also about this. There is there is value into reading those chapters for the sake of reading those chapters. I think that everyone, I absolutely guarantee you that everyone will find something for them in this book. And if people just take the time to engage with the book, to sit down and perhaps contemplate and let them be inspired by the book. Yeah, and I think I'm going to leave it here about the cover. What I would like to ask to Sarah is perhaps to tell us a little bit about the ups and downs of the process of doing this book. What would we do differently next time?
Okay, thank you, Olivier. Yeah, well, I mean, this is always a good moment at the end to think about, the pains and the gains of doing a big exercise like this. And I think the first thing we've kind of already touched on was that we were in some ways victims of our own success, in that we had no idea that we would that our call would receive 80 responses, and we were absolutely delighted by this. We think perhaps it came at the right time, it touched a nerve, it's a conversation that needed opening up, and we're delighted that it has been opened up so well with the book, and hopefully this will move forward and get ahead of steam. But at the time, we have to say that we had not budgeted for that in terms of our own time and energies, and we to curate in a new way that we were not used to, so many different chapters, and to do it in a way that really gave voice and was true to the intentions of the authors. So it was very much trial and error, and it took us time. And so I think this is a moment to apologize to the authors for the time it did take to produce the book. This was not our intention at the beginning, but we hope, we are glad you stayed with the process, and we hope that you are happy that, creativity does take time, and that this was worth it. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. In terms of the gains, in terms of, the things, so in terms of doing things differently, I think we now would know better about setting deadlines, timelines, and so on. So I think that's one thing we've certainly learned from the process. In terms of, the good things, I think there were two main things really that come up for me, at least. One was the chance to write differently, and having been able to create that space to write differently, and learning ourselves as academics to write differently. And certainly when I look back now at my gallery introductions, I want to edit them a lot more, because I'm starting to get what it means to write differently. But I think that's fine. I think, we're learning, and I think that's the point. Perhaps we wouldn't do things absolutely differently, but we've learned a few things, because this is an ongoing process. And as I said at the beginning, it's a project that we started, and Olivier said we started 10 years ago, and we're continuing with. So we're learning, and we're learning how to gather communities together. And I think this is the other point, that a book isn't just about the editors, right? It's so much about the authors. And the fact that we actually were able to bring authors into the editing process, I think was great. And I think we've learned a lot from that. And I'll certainly be taking that forward, you know, in work we do in the future. So coming on to that idea of community, we've got a real head of steam going on here now. So I'd like to pose the final question in this section to Alex. What are we going to do next? What are the plans? What are our steps forward?
Well, thank you, Sarah. And I think it feels like we've got momentum and we've got something special here, and it's impossible to stop, and nor do we want to stop. So we'd like to carry on nurturing and building this community, expanding it for other people to come in, to join, to take it on, to spread their wings, spread our wings together, and do things. So firstly, we're hoping to create a website to kind of to build the community started in the book around doing academic careers differently. And hopefully it will be a community project insofar as people will be able to use it as a blog, to blog about the different ways of doing academic careers, and tell their stories and share and exchange ideas and hopefully collaborate. So that's one thing. Another thing that we've got, initiative that we already got running, is the Critical Careers Network, or CCN. Always tempted to say CNN, but it's not, it's CCN. And we launched it in December, I think, was it November 2022, with 4 other wonderful colleagues, with Katarina, Nadia, Axel, and Gelika, that some of whom are with us today, and you see their names there on the slide. And the Critical Careers Network, so it's taking similar approach to what we've done to academic careers, but kind of more broadly. And it's basically an attempt to build a community for those interested in researching and teaching careers differently, academic and otherwise professional careers, whatever careers, and or developing their own, our own, or others' careers differently from established mainstream norms. It's open to all academics, activists, practitioners, regardless of affiliation, location, discipline, etc. Everyone is welcome. And the plan is currently to meet 2 or 3 times a year. So this current event is run jointly by CMS in Touch and Critical Careers Network. And we now have our own JISC mail list, and instructions to join the JISC mail list for Critical Careers Network should be appearing in chat about now. Okay, and if you go to the next slide, and another exciting thing that we've got coming up is with the same group of people as you saw on the previous slide. We've got a special issue for management learning. Currently open. The submission deadline is 2nd of September 2024, so still more than a year to write something. And again, it's more generally about careers, and it's about learning to do careers differently, challenges, tensions, and possibilities. And we hope to run a PDW on that with CMS in Touch sometime in the northern autumn this year. Okay, and now back to well, I think this is already said in chat, and Terry, I think, posted it in Q&A, but there's currently a discount code for the book, a 20% off on the Routledge website with this code. Okay, I think that concludes a little chat on the bench. So we now invite other people in the virtual room to join us on the bench and continue chatting. And I believe we already have some questions coming in.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, you have a few questions, and please, colleagues, friends, feel free to add more questions to the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom call.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ilaria. So I'll be reading out the questions for the purposes of the recording, because those who are watching the recording will not be able to see them written in the chat. Okay, so the first question is from Jenny Knight, and she's saying, she's asking if you need to be employed by a university to call yourself an academic, and what career is possible in those spaces. And she's saying, I'm interested in the extent to which one needs to work in the academy to have an academic career. I work in the NHS as a researcher, where I have opportunities to make a real world difference, sometimes traveling as tempered radical. But there is not a career structure for research staff in the NHS in the same way as there is in the university, and we're not perceived the same way as uni staff, even though we have doctorates, published academic work, etc. I'm lost about next steps for me. I'm 38 years old. Thank you very much, Jenny. So Sarah, Olivier, would either of you like to have a go at answering Jenny's question?
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that and these dilemmas, and we definitely feel your predicament, and it's hard, right? And it's hard for many people to find your career paths and trajectories, and I think that's something we've really learned from the book. Yeah, I think academic is such a floating term, isn't it? I mean, there are many contributions from our book, or there are contributions from the book of people who are not currently employed in academia, or who are likely to leave academia and pursue other careers, or who have pursued other careers as well. And what we also see is that people also successfully manage to join careers in different ways. It's not only as ghosts, but sometimes as having one step in and one step out of academia. I think there are certainly examples from my previous university where people from the NHS were working as adjunct staff in academia, as academics, etc. So I think there are possibilities, but it's kind of depends on what individually you want and how you want to develop and lead your career. That's not a very that's not a very specific answer, because I think the one thing we've learned is everybody's career is different, and it depends on your own values, your hopes, etc., how you want to go forward. Olivier, have you had a bit more time to think about the question?
Well, not this one, but perhaps also in the spirit of trying to answer other questions, I'm quite happy to talk a little bit about the next one. We got an anonymous attendee who's saying, as a late entry, precarious potential ghost, can you reassure us that as well as challenge, there's also potential joy within academia, and what we can do together to nurture it? So I'd like to say to our anonymous attendee first that, goodness, there's so many galleries you will enjoy reading. So this is hopefully on your list of summer reading. Is there potential joy? I think all I can say is that if you read the contributions in the late entrance gallery, and especially I'm thinking here of Mark Stringer's contribution, he's definitely enjoying himself. So by all means, if this works as a way of reassurance, the answer is yes, there is potential joy. Thank you for your question.
I'd also like to say something to that question, because I used to be an academic ghost myself. And yes, I would like to offer my reassurance that there's definitely joy. When I left my previous employer to become an academic ghost, I thought I was leaving academia forever. I lost all hope. I found academia meaningless. I only saw whips being cracked and impossible targets. I completely lost faith in myself, my own ability as an academic. I never thought I'd amount to anything. I never thought I could be successful. It took me about 2.5 years to heal from that experience. Thanks not least to my friends here, Sarah and Olivier, with whom we continued not just to be friends, but actually to write together, and to realize that the problem wasn't with me. The problem was with my previous employer. Now I am employed. after 2.5 years, I found a different academic institution where I'm now, the Open University, which has its own challenges, but which couldn't be more different from, from my previous employer who hounded me to my professional demise. So, it's a completely different supportive place where I can truly be an academic, and yes, I can actually do something meaningful. And there's encouragement rather than whips being cracked. There is support. There's amazing colleagues. There were amazing colleagues in the other place, but there wasn't amazing leadership or management. So yes, absolutely. Don't give up on academia. Try to find a place which will appreciate you, because you're totally worth appreciating, is what I would say.
Okay, could I answer the question, or I start to answer the question about the emotional handling? So many of the papers must have been emotional to read. This is a question from Anne Armstrong. Many of the papers must have been emotional to read. How did you manage your emotions as you read them? Okay. And I'd like to just go back a bit in answering that question, because in a way that's where we started out, because we did a project, the three of us, on early career academics, as Olivier outlined earlier, and we were extremely emotionally touched by those stories and the struggles and the difficulties for early career academics, of the goalposts changing, of really, really struggling to find their own identity. And I think that's what started our project. So in a way, it was almost through dealing with quite a lot of emotional content that we started to do this project. And so I think we'd already built our network, the three of us together, where we talked a lot about things that were coming in and so on. And yes, it was depressing. And I think at the end of the early career project, we did feel a bit depressed. Certainly I felt a bit depressed, and I wasn't sure I wanted to research academic careers anymore after that. But I think the book, yes, there's a lot of emotional content, but what is nice is that there are so many different voices from so many different areas of academia, right from the beginning to the end of the career life cycle, and also from many, many different parts of the world, that I think it offers hope. It really does offer hope. So I think that there was the pain, but there's also the hope, there's the bravery, the intrepidness of our authors, which gave us courage, and I think gives us courage for the future. And I think, as already has been mentioned, what we see, and I think what we're really coming to understand, is that there are lots of problems with academia. Academia is in many ways broken, and it can't be mended by individuals putting plaster on it. It does need to have collective action. And I think we are building communities, we and others are building communities, and those sort of communities are starting to develop and to gather ahead of steam. That gives hope. And I think that does help to kind of mitigate a little bit the individual stories, and thinking, well, yes, it is sad, and there are a lot of problems out there, but people are starting to gather together to protest and to challenge the kind of normative career structures that we have.
There's an interesting question. Do you have a favorite portrait? And this would be an exercise in diplomacy, perhaps. I wonder, Alex and Sarah, if you have a favorite portrait.
It's like asking you, do you have a favorite child?
I was thinking the same. Yeah, I was thinking the same. No favorites,
I absolutely love them all.
No favorites, love them all. And sometimes you love them at different stages in the process as well. It's great when you see it really coming to fruition. Some worked much harder with the authors to shape. Others just came almost ready to go.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult, because they're all great. They're all wonderful.
I would say, without necessarily identifying one in particular, one frustration in the making of the book was that initially when we made the plan for the book, I think we all had an idea for our own chapter. And very quickly we realized there were so many interesting proposals that came. We made the decision to not abuse our privilege as editors and to not put our own chapters in. But it's reassuring in a way that for example, some of the ideas I would have had for my own chapter, I saw those ideas in other people's chapter, and there was something very reassuring and gratifying about this. So in that sense, those are chapters that would resonate a lot with me. But what's my favorite chapter? I love them all.
Okay, I think we still have some unanswered questions because we went out of order a bit. So we have a question from Ilaria. Sorry, just looking at that. She's saying, I was wondering whether we could reflect on dynamics, differences, etc., in different countries and academic contexts that have different approaches and requirements for academic careers. So what are the thoughts on that?
I think we did see differences coming through, and sometimes we had to sort of draw those out for the readership because we have a very international group of authors. I think we've got authors based in 21 different countries. And we hope we'll have a very international readership. So we did work with our authors to kind of explain some of the differences in the different educational systems. And I think that was interesting for us, not to take things for granted, coming as authors coming from the familiarity of one educational environment particularly. So I think that was one thing. We do see variety. We see variety in the extent to which the neoliberal university and new performance management and etc. has affected academic life. In some countries, there are, sort of extreme cases of what is possible, unfortunately, where it is really, really bad. In other countries, sometimes perhaps it hasn't quite felt as bad as that yet. But I think we felt this, and we saw this with our earlier work too, that the kind of reach of the neoliberal excellence, new public management, performance, audit culture, etc., is spreading further and further across the world, and people are suffering because of it. And as such, it needs to be critiqued and problematized. And our authors have done that really well.
Thank you. I think maybe we have time for one last question, perhaps.
Yeah, or two if we're quick. I think there is one by Sylvia Souza who is asking, does this book capture stories from international academics or from transnational perspective? I would imagine their dilemmas, challenges around this would be more difficult, having to navigate being different themselves, apart from doing their careers differently. Well, I think the first thing to say is that all three of us are migrant academics. So, I'm not originally from the UK, neither is Olivier, and Sarah is working in France, and she's originally from the UK. So we've all been moving around quite a lot. And yes, I think there is this additional layer of marginality and vulnerability when not only you're trying to play by the rules, but you're trying to play by the rules, by someone else's rules, by the rules of a different country. Lots of our, I think, authors and chapters pick up on that from different perspectives, including, racial perspectives, racialized experiences, gendered experiences, also decolonial experiences, all this sort of complexity. It's not flat, kind of doing careers differently is not a flat or universal experience for everyone. Sarah, Olivia, do you want to add anything to that?
No, but I'm quite happy to deal maybe with the next question. If you want, so we got Marilyn, who says, I really like the notion of writing differently. Are there chapters in the book that engage with teaching differently? Oh, the question has disappeared, but I think that was the essence of the question. I think, Marilyn, I'll speak for myself here. I struggle in a way to dissociate those things. We are at the same time as academic, we are writers, we are researchers, we are teachers. I'm just reminded a few days ago, I was talking with my dear colleague, Ellen Hughes, who's with us today. Hello, Ellen. And Ellen was saying, what are we doing teaching Michael Porter and Maslow when the world is burning? And I think that, you know, one important message of the book really is that it's about being authentic. It's about being authentic and doing something that is meaningful to yourself rather than to, you know, I don't think anyone will on their deathbed be happy to say, oh yeah, I've really contributed to the key performance indicators of my university administrators. So we invite people to really do something that is meaningful with their career. And that means doing teaching that is meaningful, doing research that is meaningful, and doing everything that is meaningful.
Thank you. That's a great ending to our event today. Thank you so much to, well, the curators rather than editors of this volume. I can't wait to read it. And that absolutely magnificent drawing of the map was just a wonderful way of taking us through this journey. I also wanted to remind colleagues that this session has been recorded and you can access the recording alongside past recordings on our YouTube channel. Please feel free to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn for future events. Also, please join me in thanking the CMS in Touch colleagues who are behind the screen and helping us to run these events. And I was wondering whether we could have the slide of our
Ilaria, just
yes?
before you do, we also have a final slide to show.
Right. Yes.
Oh, please.
So just
Yeah.
which is just a thank you slide, really.
Can we put that up? Yes, here we are. Okay, so thank you, Ilaria, for wonderful chairing. It is the time to say all our thank yous as well. There are so many people. Just to a few people, just to give a shout out for. Firstly, is Terry Clark, who is our senior editor at Ratle, but also the commissioning editor of the book, who really encouraged us when we came with the original ideas and just seemed to be behind us all the time and really encouraged us to go further and further, and really indulged us in terms of, you know, all the kind of the questions we put to him and the requests for bending rules a wee bit. So thank you so much, Terry. We couldn't have done it without you. And also the production team at Routledge, who were also fantastic and really, again, indulged us in terms of timelines and so on. So thank you so much for that. For our wonderful illustrator, Joe Latham, who you've seen his wonderful map already, and for Professor Gibson Burrell for the beautiful forward to the book. We were very honoured for him to give us that. So thank you, Gibson, for that. To our reviewers and our endorsers who have generously read the early versions of the book and to give an the book proposal and endorse and the draft book and give really lovely endorsements. Everybody who's shown an interest in the project all the way through. And almost last but not least, the 82 contributors to the book, who we couldn't have done it without you, and you just helped us to shape the book so much. So thank you so much for that. You are our gifts from the gift shop, right? It was fantastic working with you all, and we look forward to future collaboration. And last but finally not least, the CMS team for supporting us today. Thank you so much, and the preparation you've done.
Now back to you, Ilaria, for the
2 seconds finished.
Thank you. Yes, we have a little bit of a pause in August, but we will resume our sessions in September. I don't know if we can share. There you go. So on the 11th of September, we have a CMS in Touch Publishing Critical Work Series event where we'll have the editors at Journal Management Studies joining us to talk a little bit about publishing critical work in their journal. So thank you so much. Hope you can join us, and thank you to the presenters and participants of today. Thank you. Thank you
so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.